Welcome to Future Sense Now, where we explore the landscape and byways of our shared futures. An e-zine of the Futures Forum live online. We exchange ideas, information, and inspiration about the futures we want. Get Future Sense Now with host Dr. Claire Nelson, futurist and editor of Human Futures.
Greetings and welcome to Future Sense Now, an online e-magazine of the Futures Forum. February is Black History Month, and so we're having an exploration on the future history of Black America. Specifically, we're examining how Blacks in these United States might be faring in the year 2030, 2040, 2050, as long as far out as you can go plausibly. But 2030 is considered a poor year because members of the United Nations have agreed to 17 goals called the Sustainable Development Goals, which they hope will drive all countries towards creating greater sustainability for their people. It is also said by the year 2030, these United States will become a majority-minority country. And so, how might that shape out in terms of the politics, the power? How is that going to shape out in terms of some of the issues of disparity and inequality? SDG 10 focusing on inequality. And so I really think it's important we begin to unpack what that might mean for the Black community here in America. So in this episode, I'll be speaking with Dr. Hugo Caicego. He's an Afro-Colombian immigrant here in the United States. He's lived in actually 3 countries, his birth country of Colombia. He's lived for some time also in France, from which I just returned, and here in the United States, where he's been for some time studying. He has multiple interests, including science and technology and healthcare, as well as in social and race relationships. And being from Latin America, music and football. We're not going to leave that out. He didn't want to leave out that part of his life. Professionally speaking, he has a multidisciplinary background. This is why I was adamant in trying to get him to our conversation. He has a postdoc in corporate sustainability and innovation, but his PhD is in biomedical engineering and biotechnology. So that's like 2 sides of the coin. And he has a bachelor's degree in electronics engineering and digital systems. So he looks both the hardware side and the software side, the algorithms that drive these systems. He has also worked in the biopharmaceutical industry, and currently he's an innovation and strategy fellow at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT for short. And so, supported by the most advanced technological, scientific, and business management resources from MIT and Harvard, and along with a lot of experts, world-renowned experts, he is developing frameworks for early precision medicine. And so enter Dr. Hugo Caicego in this conversation. Welcome.
Hi, Claire. Thanks for your nice introduction. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have you here. You have a really great background. Precision medicine is definitely, on the rise in this space, and it will certainly create opportunities or disparities. So tell me from your vantage point, when you think of 2030, this, grand vision that the world has, and the future of inequality, healthcare disparity, what kind of preparations should the Black community be making in order to move the needle of disparity in healthcare in the correct direction?
Well, I'm very excited about the future of humanity, but I'm a little bit worried about the future of the Black community. And the reason I said that is because I'm privileged to have access to the ecosystem that the top 2 universities of the world have. I'm talking about Harvard and MIT. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, sometimes I'm a little bit sad that usually I am the only Black person in the room. And very rarely I count more than 3 Black people in the room. So in the future, there will be scientific and technological changes that may bring benefits or disadvantage to Black people or to people in general. For instance, artificial intelligence is increasingly playing a more influential role in people's lives. Mm-hmm. And in the context of how these actually may benefit or affect the Black community. I just want to bring an example.
Mm-hmm.
Last year on October, a study conducted by UC Berkeley, the University of Chicago, and Partners Healthcare found that machine learning algorithms
Mm-hmm.
handling over 200 million high-risk patients nationwide
Mm-hmm.
were infected with the same racism and racial bias that human decision makers have.
Wow.
The algorithms were referring healthier white patients to essential care management programs at
Mm-hmm.
higher rates than they were referring sicker Black patients.
Wow.
So, a couple of questions that come to mind. What are the checks and balances that organizations are establishing to catch or avoid algorithmic discrimination?
Mm-hmm.
And how are those individuals who promote or don't care about algorithmic discrimination held accountable? So I fear that if society and decision makers do not care to acknowledge historical racial discrimination and disparities to the point that there should be, then the Black community will face an even bigger gap of inequality, not just in healthcare, but also in overall well-being.
Yes, I certainly would agree with that. And it's precisely why I was tracking you down so relentlessly, because there's a conversation when I think about precision medicine and we know about the history, the, his, the historical context of, Black people in this country, certainly, and relationship to access to healthcare and when they were used inappropriately for research, etc. There is this, is even the right, is even, let's say, the right or an appropriate or a percentage wise of research being done to deal with Black people's conditions like sickle cell or fibroids, for example. A lot of Black women suffer from fibroids. There's very little research in this space. So you're quite right. Precision medicine, and let me just be clear to make sure I understand. Precision medicine is medicine that's tied to the genome and the DNA of the person, right? So it's more precise in terms of it's tailored to your particular genomic and DNA. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I think that in general you have a decent understanding of what that is,
Okay.
and the only point that I wanted to bring up is that there is in general there are two terms that are interchangeably used, but they are don't necessarily the same. Actually, they're not the same. One is personalized medicine, and the other one is precision medicine. So for personalized medicines involves the creation of medicines or medical interventions specifically tailored to an individual. An example of that is something that is called CAR T cell therapies, in which immune cells from a particular person are taken out of their body and then they are genetically modified outside their bodies and then they are infused back into their body. So that particular therapy will specifically work for that particular individual. It's very personalized.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas precision medicine has most to do with the use or the use of specific medical solutions at the right time
Okay.
uh, and right individual, and is a conversion of using genomics, as you mentioned, and other emerging technologies.
Yes.
So one example of precision medicine could be a recently approved medication that is called Zolgensma. So Zolgensma is a viral vector based gene therapy that addresses the etiology of the disease, specifically The disease that I'm talking about is spinal muscular atrophy, and is characterized by a defective gene that causes the disease. So with this therapy, you basically, what you can do is to you can insert a functional copy of the dysfunctional gene within a viral vector, and then you can deliver the copy to individuals, specifically targeting the etiology of the disease. So it's much more precise in that sense because addresses the root cause of the disease. So that's kind of like the trend of what's happening right now in medicine.
Okay, so that's a very important. I had to go back there to make sure we're all on the same page, that we are aware of these terms, and more of us need to be aware of these terms. And certainly to talk about what you said earlier, the people who are doing the policies to pass these laws need to be aware of these terms. So when you think about these emerging and future technologies, right, that you're playing with now, right? Are there others? Are there other emerging and future technologies that we have to be worrying about the most from a healthcare and a governance perspective? I mean, like those of us who are advocates and activists, if we had to prioritize where we should be paying our attention, where would you suggest we look to begin to not worry, but do something, not just worry, but do something?
Yeah, as far as the future technologies, I think it was appropriate that you mentioned something about my background is very multidisciplinary. So it's not just specific on one particular field. And I think that this is great to have specifically now, because what we're seeing right now is an evolution of a variety of different sciences and technology, and they're converging. So having the ability to speak those different languages, I think is beneficial. So a few years ago, Mr. Klaus Schwab, the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, stated that we are at the brink of a technological revolution that will blur the boundaries between the physical, the digital, and the biological worlds. And indeed, I mean, the digitization, the impact and pace of technology breakthroughs in fields such as nanotechnology, biotechnology, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and wireless mesh networks will fundamentally change civilization in ways that humankind has never experienced before. And the change will permeate all aspects of society, including the way that people interact with each other, the economic landscape, the skills needed to get a job, political decision making, and of course, healthcare.
Well, yeah, and that's a nice breakdown of what we are calling the Industry 4.0 complex. You're talking about, for example, moving from pacemakers to a nano implant, and in all of these things are kind of shaking us up, I think, because it's happening so fast. I was just actually looking at a magazine called Medical Economics, and it was saying about the fact that patients today are demanding more of their doctors. They want to go online and research their own healthcare. Well, some of us anyway. And then they come to doctors and say, I want this, not that. But then who is checking these facts? So we have an information explosion. We know we're going to be moving towards 400 billion phones in the next 5 years. So we have an information explosion. But who is the arbiter of all these medical facts? Who is checking to make sure that there's a seal of approval for a WebMD or whatever other MD online that there is, so that we, the consumer, can be aware? And then even so, given again the dearth of research that target diseases and conditions that are very significantly higher in the Black community, how are we going to begin to use these platforms as well to better increase our knowledge? I'm thinking that when you think about then, let's say blockchain and AI, which we know can be used on the negative side, what technologies do you think will most drive our opportunity to get equal opportunity and equal access and improve our healthcare outcomes? Which of the technologies, together or singly, might we look to change policy or management or whatever around to benefit our healthcare outcomes?
Well, I mean, before I mentioned how artificial intelligence is increasingly playing a more influential role in people's lives, biotechnology and in particular gene editing could bring great benefit to society, specifically for those populations where the prevalence of specific disease is higher. For instance, within the Black community, hypertension in certain cases is higher than compared to other races, or lupus. So there could be opportunities to use biotechnology and emerging medicine to help us create better solutions, more effective solutions, right? However, is also, I mean, when it comes to genomics and gene editing and genetics, I think it's appropriate to put some checks and balances in the right place, because there could also be unwanted consequences. We have to remember, or for those who don't even know, people need to get educated. In the past, here in the US and in the UK, scientists and social Darwinists just pioneered something that is called eugenics. So eugenics is a set of beliefs and practices that try to, according to racist beliefs, improve, quote unquote, the genetic quality of a human population by excluding certain genetic groups judged to be inferior. So eugenics brought a lot of misery to the Black community here in the US, but it was used and disseminated by prominent institutions. And an interesting fact is that the Nazis learned about eugenics, and then they used it as their ideological propaganda. So eugenics fell into disfavor only after the perversion of its doctrines by the Nazis, but before a lot of people were being affected, and that practice was being actually used. So when I think of the progress of genomics and gene editing, I'm happy that a lot of benefit can be brought. But like I said before, if we don't have the right checks and balances in place, there will be those who, for whatever reason, might want to oppress others. And we really need to avoid that, because we really need to learn from the past.
Yeah, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about, okay, we're here in America, but you and both of us come from different places, and of course, the medical system, certainly in Jamaica, is nowhere near the medical system here. But I'm wondering if you have, in your research, had the opportunity to kind of sort of reach back into what's happening in Latin America to see where they stand on these issues.
As far as the progress with biotechnology,
yes. Have you had a chance? Because many people, and I should say this for people who don't know, there's a significant population of Black people in Colombia. Between, some say 40% of the population is African descendant, because some of, depending on how light skinned you are, you can claim to be Black or otherwise. And up until the UN World Conference Against Racism, it was a very big secret that so many people in Colombia were Black. You didn't see them on TV, you didn't see them in the public spaces. They were popular like on sports and entertainment, but you didn't see them as scientists and lawyers. They didn't have the same access to university. And so it's been a really big struggle, paralleling in some ways the civil rights movement in the United States. But I would say in the last 20 years, certainly since the UN World Conference on Racism, the Black Afro-Colombian movement has kind of come into its own, and a lot of exchange has been happening between the Black communities in Colombia and the US and vice versa. So there's a lot more learning on both sides. So I was raising that question because having had the opportunity to visit, to work with those communities, I'm just wondering how are they faring in this in industry 4.0 conversation? Is it already happening in Latin America as far as you know, or have you kind of not paid attention to what's happening there?
Well, as far as like technology evolution and science progress, I think that not just Latin America, but everywhere else around the world, people are paying attention to the changes. But I would say that there are specific hubs where most of the action is actually being conducted. So those places are specifically here in the US, but not all over the US, but specifically.
Well, Boston is a big hub.
Yeah, exactly. The East Coast, Boston, and the West Coast, and some other places as well. And of course, Europe and Asia.
Yeah.
I would say that in Latin America, there are people that are very well informed. They follow the news. They understand that there are fundamental changes that are transforming the way we see society and how the future of humanity is going to be. But I would say that the trend is definitely being set either in the US, Europe, or Asia.
Yeah, certainly. Well, we know recently that China actually arrested a doctor who did the gene editing on the child. So I don't know if that's in the wake of the scandal with the current virus or what, but clearly it's going to be a shakeup. I mean, people are very shaken by this current virus. I don't know if some of the work that you guys in Boston are doing on gene editing could, have help find a quicker, treatment. But all of this is like, in a sense, very, how can I say, the global space of the World Health Organization, I'm sure, is watching all of these things closely so that we don't have more disparity in healthcare globally, especially around populations which are poor countries. Another thing, just to reiterate what you said about Boston being a hub, I found out recently that I think it's Denmark or one of those countries actually had set up a Danish Institute of Science in Boston, and basically, sent over a whole bunch of their scientists to live there and work this a little bit closer to the hub. So it's a Denmark or Norway, one of those two countries. But my point is that a lot of stuff are happening, but as you say, if you're the only one in the room, then it's sometimes we have to work harder to find those relationships. And part of the reason for this conversation is to begin to identify where the potentials for partnerships across different silos, such as yourself, in different eras, can come together to change the conversation on healthcare futures. So as we come to a close, and thinking about 2030, thinking about the Sustainable Development Goals, there's so many for health and inequality. Could you share with me a headline from the year 2030, standing in the power of the future? What is something you'd like to see based on the work that you are doing?
Well, based on the work and experience, and like I said, the privileged ecosystem that I have, that I'm in, shall we say, I would like to read something like this. thanks to compassionate humanity, scientific breakthroughs, and technology innovation, finally, healthcare has arrived for all. And and the reason I said this is because currently we don't have a real healthcare system. What we have is a sick care system.
Ah,
So in
okay.
the current model of the so-called healthcare delivery system, medical treatment does not typically occur until clinical signs and symptoms have manifested,
Wow.
often at a late stage where curative intervention may be improbable. And that's what we have right now. I mean, that's what we have had for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
And as we are moving towards the future, I
Mm-hmm.
think that uh, scientific breakthroughs, technological innovation, they are they're coming here for a reason. They're allowing us to come up with much more innovative solutions. But I think that it's not just the science or the technology that we really need to pay attention to. We also need to pay attention to our mental models, to our paradigms, to the way we have been conducting businesses,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what really going to move the needle. If we use all the science and technology that is being developed in the same old fashioned way,
Mm-hmm.
the the progress is going to be minimum,
Mm-hmm.
and we're really going to miss a tremendous opportunity. I think that right now we have a tremendous opportunity to challenge our assumptions and our paradigms,
Mm-hmm.
and with the advent of precision medicine, I think that there is a real opportunity to start thinking of real healthcare.
Yeah. Wow. We don't have healthcare system in this country. We have a sick care system. I really love that statement. I really hope that as we move through this conversation on what America should look like, and as we start thinking through as a community in our different professional spheres that are trying to advocate for new political systems and new policy systems, more importantly, we are looking at those aspects of it. And as you say, moving beyond the technology, which is there, but the mental paradigms, the mental models, and the economic paradigms that are also responsible for shaping what we're experiencing. I just want to thank you so much.
Yeah, the incentives. I mean, I think that you hit the nail on the head. Uh, we have a system of incentives that really drive our mental models, our paradigms, the way we interact with each other, the value we put on things, and how we actually recognize and distribute that value among each others.
Mhm.
Is It requires just more than just technological or scientific breakthroughs. It really requires what it means to be human and how we actually think we as a society and humanity should make progress together, where collectively everybody wins, collectively everybody make progress, instead of just a selfish individualistic approach.
Mhm.
I think that there is still opportunity to create financial wealth, health wealth, if we focus our attention in the collective well-being.
Mhm.
Like I said at the beginning, I'm very optimistic of the future. The technology, the science that is coming is just exciting.
Mhm.
But uh, I would like for people to actually think of really, okay, well, as humans, we also need to make progress as far as like we are here together, and
Mhm.
either we win together or we lose together.
Yeah. Fantastic. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you so much, Dr. Hugo Caicego, for sharing these thoughts with us on the future of Black America, the future of healthcare, and explaining in a little more detail the difference between personalized medicine and precision medicine. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I really enjoyed it being here, and this is a great opportunity to disseminate and put out there those concepts and those thoughts, so others, and especially those that have the decision making power, can listen and can take proactive action that could help benefit the community.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it, folks. We have been spending some time with Dr. Hugo Caicego. He is a biotechnology, biomedical, hardware, software engineer who deals with corporate social responsibility and innovation in medicine, and all of those things together. Just remember that we have been listening to the Future Sense Now, where we explore salient ideas for sustainable futures. And remember also, the future is embedded in the landscape today. So we co-create the future. Go out and do your part. And until next time, safe journeys.
Thank you for listening to Future Sense Now with Dr. Claire Nelson. Future Sense Now is produced by the Futures Forum in Washington, D.C. For more information, visit www.thefuturesforum.org. Remember, our futures are embedded in the landscape of our present stories. Seize the day, share this story, and share the future.